If you've spent any time looking up videos on drinking, the effects of alcohol, or anything related to the alcohol topic, no doubt you have come across a man named Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is a well-renowned psychologist, philosopher, teacher, all kinds of things rolled into one, and he has some very interesting views on alcohol. But are they right? And can they help you get and stay sober? Well, today that is what we are going to talk about. We're going to break down some of the things that Jordan Peterson says about alcoholism, alcohol, and all different things like that. Now, from what I've gathered, what was his name? Jordan, there we go, my brain's off today. Jordan Peterson never was an actual alcoholic. I've heard that he drank quite a bit during high school or during college times, but at 27 he just kind of stopped drinking, which begs the question, can he help us as alcoholics? And that's what we're here to define today. We got some notes. We got Terry. We're going to talk about this issue and go through what he defines as alcoholism. Is alcohol good? Is it bad? Is this information helpful, or is it dangerous for you as the alcoholic? And that's something very important, because when I was trying to get sober, there was a lot of dangerous information out there that kept me stuck, that landed me in a mental hospital because I couldn't figure out which way was up and I couldn't figure out what was going on. However, in hindsight, looking at it, if there was someone out there that came along and said, this is what's going on, that would have helped. And so we're going to break this down. We're going to have a conversation about what Jordan Peterson is saying about alcoholism, alcoholics, and what you need to know. So, Terry, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it was interesting studying about Jordan Peterson over the past few days, and he's got a really good perspective. Normally I feel the people with the best perspective towards alcohol, alcohol abuse and alcohol use disorder are generally people that have recovered from it, because we've been through it. We know a lot of the nuances and how to get sober, the struggles we face during our drinking and things like that. But and as you said, Jordan Peterson did not become an alcoholic, but he definitely had his share of abusing it in his younger years, like many of us do or did. And that was definitely the case with me. But his perspective is very close to what we talk about all the time. And that's as far as recovery goes, definitely. He does talk about how alcohol it's fun. It was fun for him. And that's the case with me, too. It was fun for me. I enjoyed it up until the last day that I drank. I did not enjoy the consequences that came along with it. And that may have helped me stop a little bit sooner than I may have. For many people, they have to suffer some pretty severe consequences before they finally do end up stopping, and sometimes some people still don't. But that perspective from him is true. That's what I didn't start drinking to hide feelings or anything like that. I started because it was fun. It's what my friends were doing, and as time went on, that I started to hang out with people that were drinking and doing those sorts of things. And that's kind of what I did. And, I moved to the wine country and enjoyed it even more. And it was fun times and in beautiful places. And it wasn't a bad thing until it slowly did become a bad thing for me. And consequences did start happening. Maybe not the consequences. I think a lot of people that having a problem with alcohol, they don't necessarily get those legal consequences, the money consequences. Maybe they don't get some of those, but they get some of those relationship consequences, or they just start becoming unhealthy and they don't feel good about themselves. Maybe they're not as productive as they want to be, and that's what he talks about a lot. Is that's what happens with alcohol. There's no good aspects to it. It does not help us in any way. We get the feeling that it helps us, like maybe when we were younger, or maybe even now, whatever. But maybe it helps us handle social situations. It allows us to talk to other people when otherwise we might have been nervous and scared to talk to strange people and strike up a conversation. Lets down many of the inhibitions. But He talks about he mentions that it is one of the most dangerous drugs out there, and yeah, I would agree with you because it's socially acceptable. Society has they're all for it. It's fun. You see commercials on TV. The alcohol companies are able to promote it and things like that. And that's the first aspect of it. So it makes us think that it's okay. You know, your commercials aren't showing you the people that are down in the dumps drinking too much. They're showing you at the beach having a great time with all your friends, and then they say at the end, "Please drink responsibly." Well, that was pretty much never me, never drinking responsibly, and it's that for certain people, that's a difficult thing. He mentions that about 10% of the people that drink alcohol regularly become addicted to it, and they do have a disorder with it. But he also mentions that many, many more people have abused it or abuse it on a regular basis, and that's one of the dangerous things about it. He also talks about statistics and how alcohol has a pretty strong correlation with many crimes and things like that, and abuse and violence and things like that. And I would tend to agree. I mean, how many fights do you see outside of maybe a coffee shop, you know? And then how many fights do you see outside of a bar? I'd say the percentage is quite a bit higher at a bar, you know. And you'd think maybe coffee shop, maybe there's some people are all caffeined out, but no, alcohol tends to affect our mood a lot, takes down the inhibitions, possibly makes us more aggressive. And that could be it. I know Marcus talks about one of his stories, how, because he's not the biggest guy in the world, and how he just would have no fear and challenge that big old football player guy.
Probably not the best hour, but luckily I was able to make him laugh. But yeah, I think it's interesting because there's several different points that Jordan Peterson talks about that I think are interesting. One of the most interesting was a story or a study in Montreal done by this guy named Frank Irvin. And what happened was they studied the effect of alcohol on green monkeys. So it'd take all these monkeys and they'd take them to the monkey bar, which that sounds like, yeah. At any rate, they would take them, they'd give them some alcohol, and they would let the monkeys drink as much as they wanted, much like if you were to go to a bar and drink as much as you wanted. And Terry and I both know that if we were to go to a bar tonight, one would never be enough. I would probably be drunk by the time I left the bar, because that's how I am disposed or predisposed to drinking. And so they took these green monkeys and they gave them the alcohol, and they noticed that without any prompting, without any alcohol abuse, any history, ever even having alcohol, 5% of these green monkeys, upon their first time drinking, would drink themselves into a coma, which is interesting. Because it's like, well, why would that happen? I mean, if you went to a monkey and you're like, hey, dude, here's a coma, would you like it? They'd say no. However, they were able to drink the alcohol to a coma, and a lot of them drank alcoholically. Now, some people think that this means that the 5% were predisposed to alcoholism. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not a scientist, but I don't know if you can be predisposed to a condition of something you've never had. Was I an alcoholic when I was 2 years old? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not a scientist there, but I think that what happens is alcohol leads to alcoholism, right? Without the alcohol, you can't have an alcoholic. Without the drugs, you can't have a drug addict. Without whatever it is, you can't have that other thing. And what happened, I believe, is with the monkeys, is they were drinking to intoxication, which lowered their ability to figure out what's going on with their body. And they liked the effect of alcohol, and maybe they weren't able to put it into words. One of the most fascinating things, I think, with the human race is the fact that we have language. That's what sets us apart from everything. We have the ability to communicate and talk on a level that is completely different than anything else out there, with the exception of now AI, which is interesting. But we look at that and we're like, okay, if the monkeys were able to say, hey, Tom goes to Bill the monkey and is like, hey, Bill, if we drink too much of that, this is what's going to happen. Could that have circumvented it, or are they predisposed to drink alcohol no matter what? And we look at those, and also when you think about the fact that we think in thoughts, right? They're not able to be like, well, this is a 9% alcoholic beverage. If I have this many, here's what's going to happen. Here are the facts on alcohol and everything like that. Now, we do have the facts. We do have the understanding, and that is going to be the power in your sobriety. If you're struggling with drinking and you're listening to people like Jordan Peterson, which has very, very good points, but I think that when it comes to an alcoholic, understanding what's actually going on. If you were to go to those monkeys and try to explain what is happening to the 5% of the monkeys, none of them are going to get it, even if they are trained in philosophy. They're not going to get it because they haven't been there, they haven't done that, they don't know what it feels like to ingest it and feel the desire, the drive, the pull to drink more. They've never felt it, so they don't know. And I think that that is something that is very important here, because maybe you guys are like me and Terry, where we found ourselves in the grips of addiction and we couldn't get out. There was tons of things explaining what was going on. I could have listened to Jordan Peterson. I probably did. I think he was just getting popular around the time that I got sober, and I probably did listen to some of his talks on alcoholism. I listened to all kinds of people. I listened to philosophy, I listened to psychology, I listened to doctors, I listened to all kinds of things. And unfortunately for me, in my journey, nothing brought me to understand that alcohol is the problem. And I think that looking at this with, oh, hey, they're predisposed to alcoholism, I don't think so, because they were never exposed to alcohol. So I think what he's hitting the nail on the head here is, yes, 10% of the people are becoming addicted to this alcohol stuff. Yes, there is an issue. Yes, we saw the monkey study, but also it is the chemicals issue, right? This is an issue with a chemical. It's not an issue, in my opinion, with, the way that we were born or genetics or anything like that. We might be trained to have maladaptive coping mechanisms, which leads into wanting to drink because it helps, like he says here. They drank because they wanted to get the anxiety to go away. They wanted to be more outgoing. They wanted this certain stuff. And again, he says it's all an illusion, which it is an illusion. But I think the key fact here is that alcohol begets alcoholism. That is the fact. And if we understand that, we remove the chemical and life gets better. Now, I know a lot of people talk about AA and church and different things like that, and 10 steps and 12 steps and everything like that. That's all dealing with the stuff beforehand. What was it that made you want to drink? What made you need to escape with drinking? Okay, but chemical dependency, I believe, and Terry, you can weigh in on this too, I believe that chemical dependency is in a box all by itself. Right? Like you get the right person in the right state of mind having a bad day, they're going to drink alcoholically, and their chances of becoming an alcoholic go up exponentially. Right? If I always just had 1 beer, 2 beer, call it a day, like those people who leave half their drink and leave the restaurant, right? I was never that kind of person. But if I was able to do that, would I have had the same odds of drinking alcoholically as me being someone saying, I'm anxious, I drink, I feel better? Have issues with spouse, drink, feel better. Issues at work, drink, slow down brain, able to work. All these things are making me drink more, building up a tolerance, and then the alcohol literally takes over. And I believe that is what happened with those 5% of the monkeys in a rapid way, like very fast. And I think that ignoring the fact that these monkeys were fine. Like nobody had comas, nobody had issues, nobody was anxious, nobody had anything. They were just monkeying around. And all of a sudden you introduce alcohol, you get the monkeys that are alcoholics, you get the ones drinking themselves into a coma, and you realize that it is a matter of fact, the problem is alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the chemical dependency. And the drinking programs, they'll help you stay away and get away from that mindset of trying to escape from something. And for me, drinking was not as much of an escape for me. It was more of an enhancement for me. So I thought I needed it to be happier, and you know, that ended up not being the case. Eventually, it did become an escape from the realization that things were not getting good in my life; they were going downhill, and I drink to push those feelings away. Um, you know, it's kind of interesting with the monkey study. I wonder if part of the reasons they started to have problems with alcohol is maybe they were in a cage and they had nothing else to do. And you know, I kind of giggle a little bit, but that's for me. I didn't have anything going on in my life, and boredom was kind of part of it. I didn't know what else to do in life, so as my drinking was escalating more and more and more, and I was able to do less and less meaningful things in my life, I started drinking more and more. Just whether it was to escape because of my feeling of that I'm useless. I don't do anything with my life. Maybe that was my thought, or whatever it was, and that could have been part of the reason. But why? It doesn't matter. I can't drink anymore, and that's one thing that I've realized is the why I drank is it's just it doesn't matter other than the fact that I don't want to get back in that circle of doom again. You know. Yeah, a couple things that Jordan was talking about, and I kind of agree with what he's saying. One is when you're trying to quit drinking, rather than, uh, I'll say it anyways, rather than looking at what it's doing to you and what's happening because of the alcohol, rather than focusing so much on that, focus on what will happen if you stop drinking. And that was kind of the case with me. I did spin around for a long time realizing what alcohol was doing to me, and that would make me more depressed and keep drinking even though I was just fighting it and I can't drink anymore. That was my thoughts is I can't drink anymore. I can't drink anymore. Look what it's doing to me. And then I drink more because I was just couldn't handle those feelings. And when towards the very end, I started to realize, you know, what's life going to be like when I quit drinking? And of course, one thought was life is going to be super boring. Da da da, I'm going to have no life left. Of course, that's everybody's natural thought when they're trying to quit drinking. But I also realized that no, things can be a lot better. I'll have to figure out what to do with my life. I'm a little scared of that. But that is kind of what I thought. And that's one of the things he mentions is think about what it's going to be like when you are sober. And you know, one of the other things he was talking about, and I'm trying to look at what he is saying here, but um, instead of what he says is instead of looking to pursue happiness in sobriety, and yeah, we all want to be happy, definitely, and that's what I want to be happy as well. But rather than focusing on happiness, because it's such a general term, it's hard to really specify what that means. Is try to focus on doing something meaningful with your life. And that's a really difficult thing to do. At least it was for me. I got sober. I'm like, okay, what do I do now? That's where I was. I had no clue on what to do. But what was meaningful for me was just starting to get my life back together. That was meaningful. And now that came down to simple things like I'm going to organize this drawer in the kitchen. I mean, silly little things, but it was meaningful to me because I was starting to get some semblance of organization in my life, and that kind of helped me realize, okay, my life can come back together. Oh, but going on from there was helping other people that are struggling with alcohol. That's a big one because I have a long story, and I've been through a lot, and I know what it took for me to get sober, so I can share that with other people. And then other things that I like to do that do make me happy, but are also meaningful to me. I ride a bike, I hike, walk the dog, spend time with my wife, getting back together with the family and not lying so much. Meaningful things in life, and that's a real good way to look at sobriety as after you've gotten sober, and you're working towards staying sober. And that's what we really try to talk about here is a successful way to stay sober. And that's important for me. And I've said it many times. If I had to fight alcohol, I don't know if I'd still be sober. I don't have to fight it anymore. It's just there. And in the beginning, I stayed away from it, but now, well, I still stay away from it, but I'm able to go to things where alcohol is being served, and events and things like that, and that's okay. I don't need alcohol. I see other people, it makes them, when they get drunk, they get stupid, and I don't want to be that anymore. I was there. I was definitely there. Now I can just be stupid sober.
I was just going to say that. I'm like, I'm stupid before I start drinking. I don't think it's going to help me any.
At least now, when I'm stupid sober, I remember it, and I can try not to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because, he goes through and talks about that alcohol is almost the sole cause of domestic abuse, that's kind of shocking. I didn't know that. I mean, I thought it, but I didn't know it was like close to 90% or whatever he's saying, which is interesting. And I think it's really unfortunate that our culture does not educate us. Like there should, I remember some of it. I slept through most of health class in high school. I had a early morning class, so I used that one to sleep. But from what I did pay attention to, they talked about alcohol and they talked about don't drink and drive and stuff like that, but they didn't talk about the effects of what alcohol does to you. And I don't know if that's because there's way too much money in the alcohol industry. I don't know if it's because they just haven't thought about it. This has been an ongoing issue even in the Bible, it talks about alcoholics and drunks and what are we going to do with them. And back then they thought it was like a possession kind of thing, which in a sense it is, alcohol is possessing your thoughts and your body. So in a sense that is true. Is it, some entity outside of the realm of the world? I don't think so. But does it, and it's interesting to study that because that's why they call it spirits. It's why hard drinks are called spirits, because they thought that the spirit would take you over. And even back then with the limited ideas of what was going on, because if you go back and you look at the Bible and you're like, oh, here's this guy walking in, and again, I'm not a Bible person at all. I just think it's interesting to look at ancient texts. I look at, Hinduism and all kinds of things, but it's interesting to look at the fact that someone would walk in and they would say, oh, well, this person is possessed by the devil or whatever. And now we know that, oh, hey, it's probably just this mental condition or schizophrenia or whatever it is. And if you've ever seen stuff like that, it's very interesting to look at how the mind can be warped or altered. There's a book, I think it was called My Stroke of Insight. It's a good book years ago I read where there was this neuroscientist who had a stroke, and she remembers what it was like to have that stroke firsthand and what it did. The ability to have part of your brain completely impaired physically. And then they go on and talk about, different stories of people who they have had brain injuries. And a brain injury is something that, once that happens, it's very difficult to get the person back. I remember years ago, there was a family friend, and he was drinking at a party, and there was a hilly area, and he went on an ATV and flipped the ATV over, and he had to be airlifted out. He was almost paralyzed. This guy, you wouldn't recognize him. Like, it's not the same person that was before the accident. And I don't even know if he knows he's not the same person. And that's because of what is happening to the brain. And so with alcohol, what we're doing is we're doing short-term, quick damage, some of it long-lasting, some of it not long-lasting, and we're voluntarily having that. We're voluntarily agreeing to have some kind of damage done to our brain for that small period of time because maybe it feels good, or maybe the anxiety goes away, or whatever it is. But when we understand that that is the case. Like when I look at that family friend, I'm not going to get mad at him for not being the same person. He has a condition wrong with his brain. Now, that's not to say you get a jail free card. It's not to say, oh, hey, I drunk and it was possessed by the spirits and they made me do it. No, you're fully accountable for your actions. But I think that understanding for me as an alcoholic, hey, this is what happened to my brain. This is not me. I wouldn't do this in a normal instance. Therefore, what is the problem? Like you look at it and there's got to be money involved, because if what Jordan is saying is true and almost all domestic abuse and things like that are because of alcoholism, then yeah, maybe it's time to look at that in a harder way. Like if that's the case, I mean, I know we live in the United States of corporations, but maybe money's not the most important thing here. Maybe it's the people that are getting abused. Maybe it's the people that are struggling. Maybe it's the people that have this. And I think that looking at it as a moral failure or a weak-willed person is to grossly misunderstate the power that alcohol has. It is alone the problem. If you are an alcoholic or you're struggling, if you're wondering you're an alcoholic and you're watching us, it is the problem. I had to prove this to myself almost to an early grave because I didn't believe, oh, it can't be alcohol. There's Tom over there drinking his head off and he's fine. There's that guy over there who has a glass of wine and he's done for the night. Why can't I be like that? Well, that's the wrong question to ask. The question is why am I the way I am? The way I am is because I am alcoholically, chemically dependent. And if you've never felt the grips of chemical dependency, I wouldn't wish that on the worst person in my life, because it is hell. And the old adage, I know you've probably heard it, Terry, is church is for people who don't want to go to hell. Alcoholism is for people who, or getting sober is for people who went to hell and don't want to go back.
Right.
And it is a living hell. I mean, it is so terrifying to be in the grips of that and watch what it does to your mind and watch what it does to your thoughts and your anxiety and watch how everything dear to you fades in comparison to getting a drink. You think you're a good family man? Yeah, chemical dependency is going to make you put the drink ahead of anything. You literally will. And you look at that and it's like, well, that guy, he's just not strong. No, he's chemically dependent. Fact. Now, I know they did this with the makers of Oxy, even though I think apparently they're able to market it under something else. And they tried to get them under wraps, but it is the chemical. Like they looked at that case and they're like, okay, this family that promoted this drug, they knew it was addictive. I mean, alcohol is one of the most addictive drugs I've seen. Like smoking and stuff like that. There is an addictive property, but it's not like if you give a monkey a cigarette, I don't think he's going to have a bunch until his lungs give out. But if you give the monkey alcohol, yeah, that does happen. He drinks enough till his brain and his body go out. So what is the difference here? And I would submit, and Terry, you weigh in on this, that the addiction is chemically different. Like people who are addicted to, OCD, biting their nails, or people that are addicted to whatever it is. Unless it has that chemical component that alcohol and drugs have, I think it's a different animal altogether. Because what we're fighting isn't just little addictive properties, it's what drinking over time is actually doing to our brain, which is terrifying. Right, so what do you think about that? I know we're going a little over. Hopefully we have time.
Oh, that's okay. Well, yeah, it absolutely rewires the brain, and as we become more and more addicted, we need the alcohol to just feel normal, to have just get those endorphins going, and absolutely. And you're talking about the separation of chemical dependency versus all these other things in our life, and that rings true with me. Yeah, we talk about, many programs talk about all this stuff that you need to do to stay sober and to get sober. and it's difficult to differentiate, but I had to stop drinking. Alcohol had to come off of the table completely for me. I'm saying before I started working on other things in life, but really it was in conjunction with that. I had to start working on other things in life as well as taking alcohol off the table, but they were two separate things. The main thing is, and even AA, there's 12 steps in the AA program. Only the first step talks about alcohol. All the rest are how to live life without it. And they're separate. And for me, alcohol had to come off of the table, and I had to work on other things in life so that I wouldn't think that alcohol was okay. And that was huge for me. I did want to just touch a couple of comments. I don't know if you're still here, Nancy, but you said you need help. You said that before we actually started. And try all different programs. We have a program of sobriety here at talksober.com, but there's many programs you can do. If you're having withdrawal symptoms, you need to go to a doctor. They're going to point you in the right direction. So that's really important. So do that. Keep trying. If you've been trying before, just keep going. You can do this. I didn't think I could ever get sober, and I got it. So, and I want to congratulate Siegel for, what did you say you had? I got to scroll back up to find it. You had 8 weeks sober. That's awesome. And you had also mentioned that you can't have one nip. You can't have any. That's me too. I can't, because kaboom, as you said, I'll be back drinking right away. I've proved that to myself, definitely. And there's one other, Darylyn, you said, how long after being sober can you come around people or places where they're drinking? I want to answer that because I mentioned it before. For me, it really depends on the person. And I'll just tell you what my experience was, is I stayed away from anything that had to do with alcohol for probably the first year. I wasn't catering, so working, obviously it was around. But I did not do anything like that. I still, after 9 years, I still don't I don't go to bars. Friends say, hey, we're going out for drinks. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go out for drinks. I don't. That's just not something I do. I don't know. Would I be fine? Probably. Maybe not. I don't know. But why? Why do I want to sit around and watch other people get drunk? It does nothing for me. And that's why I don't go. It's not so much that I would cave into to the alcohol or anything like that. It's just that I don't see any reason why I would. As far as events go, if there's a reason to go to an event, it's a wedding, I've been invited to it, there's alcohol, yeah, I'm going to go. Sure. I'm going to go with the intention and the knowledge of what am I going to drink instead of alcohol. I'm not going to go blind and go, I'm just going to suffer through it and drink plain tap water. I'm going to know I'm going to drink a soda, this particular one, or I'm bringing my own soda, stuff like that. As far as when can you do it, I don't know. It's really up to you. I just figured it out on my own, just going, trying things slowly and having an escape if I needed to escape right away. If I did get a craving or something like that, or it just didn't feel right, I brought my own car so I could leave right away, So there you go. There's the answer to that.
Cool. Did we answer the one about, is pot addictive?
I did not.
Okay. I'll weigh in on that one. So,
yeah, go ahead.
My brother said he was addicted to it. I think he was more addicted to the feelings it gave him. I don't think it was necessarily an addictive chemical. Is it smart to do? No. I mean, as a sober person, I want to try to be as chemically free as I can. I don't want chemicals to alter my brain unless the doctor says I absolutely have to. And even then, I'm going to question it, because I went and years ago, I had, I think it was prednisone or something like that, for asthma. And I noticed I was staying up all night and working, and I felt like Superman, and I was terrified that I was getting addicted. So I went to her and I said, what is in this? Is there an alternative? And she was like, well, the closest alternative is this, but it's not even close. So when I get in a really bad jam, I will do that, but I will do it very sparingly, because I know what it does to my mind. If I was to partake of the pot, I don't think it would be long before I started drinking again. I know the way my mind works and be like, well, you're able to have pot, you're probably able to have one of these. I mean, you handled that, you're probably okay. And it's a very, very tricky slope. I remember years ago, I think it was, what, 2 or 3 years, almost 5 years ago now, that, and again, remember, this was 5 years into my sobriety. I wouldn't have touched it before then. 5 years into my sobriety, they came out with Heineken Zero, which was a true 0% non-alcoholic, no alcohol beer. And so I was like, okay, I do miss the taste of beer. And I checked it. I was like, am I certain that I'm not missing the alcohol that is in the beer? And so I told my family, I said, I'm going to try one of these and I want you, let's keep it in check, because if this is weird, if I get any feeling, if I'm like, oh, I want the real thing, I'm not going to try these. And so I tried them and I found out that it was actually the variety and the difference in those that I wanted. Again, we're talking 5 years into sobriety. I wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole before that. And I did want to make sure it was a 0%. And so, I don't know why this microphone keeps coming off here. And so, that is something that I had to learn and go through. And knowing that my brain is that way, because I didn't want to get in a situation where I was like, well, you had Heineken Zero. How about Heineken Light? How about Heineken Full? How about, whatever. And I had to make sure that that wasn't going to be the case. And with pot, I think that would be the case. I think it would alter me enough to where I would be altered and it would affect that. With the 0% ones, obviously not saying that's a recommendation or anything like that. To each his own. Terry does not do that. And I would say that probably most alcoholics don't. Some do. It's very light. Again, looking at how careful I was with something like that, because at that point, you're only dealing with the mental issue. At that point, I'm dealing with my mental obsession. That's what I'm fighting if that was to bring something up for me. It would be a mental battle. It wouldn't be chemical, because all it is basically water with calories, right? And so looking at something else, that is bringing that battle. Like if I had one glass of wine and said, I'm only going to have one, I'm strong, and that is going to alter me chemically. So that is all bets off the table. And I think it's important to look at that and say, as an alcoholic or addict, it is all bets off the table once I ingest one. That is the problem. And I don't think other chemicals are going to help. And I've seen it happen time and time again with friends and family members who want to get sober, and that's their last thing. They won't give up. And they also continue to have trouble with alcohol and other things as well, because it is, the door's open. And that is the problem. It's like, oh, hey, I'm only going to see my ex once in a while. It's like, okay, well, those feelings are going to come back. As soon as they come in the room, you're going to be chemically altered by them coming in the room, and it's going to change that. And I think that's important to look at.
Yeah. Hey, congratulations, Avocado Man, 100 days.
Awesome.
And that's, my perspective towards all that, like pot or even the 0%, which would be on a completely different classification as pot. So as far as any mind-altering drugs, they're not part of my life anymore. I'm not going to try them. I've heard people say that it's okay. I know somebody that went to rehab for pot. For me, I liked it very much, absolutely. So I better not touch it, because that, as Marcus said, it may drive me towards that drink. I don't know. I'm kind of overly cautious for my sobriety, as far as I'm going to do more than I think I need to do, and I'm going to continue to do more and more than I think I need to do to stay sober, because I don't want to take that chance. I don't even want that 1% of chance that I'm going to take a drink. So I do whatever I can. For non-alcoholic beer, I never had that, since I've stopped drinking, I've never had that thought of I wanted that taste of beer or anything. So that's why I just stay away from it. It's 0%. Some people can do it, some people don't. I would suggest in your first year or two or whatever is don't touch it. You don't want to remind yourself of the of the beer and possibly start drinking the same thing. Or at a party, be very careful because you may pick up the wrong bottle, things
Yes.
like that.
Yep.
But for me, yeah, I never.
That's
It's I just drink other stuff, you know.
that. That's a great point as well. The wrong bottle issue. I had ordered a non-alcoholic beer one night after a concert, and they brought over an alcoholic one, and I knew from tasting it, I'm like, something's off here. And I was able to have the waitress come back over and double check and ask, and her face dropped. She's like, no, that is an alcoholic one. A year, 2 years, 3 years into sobriety, could I have done that? I don't think so. I probably would have downed it. Yeah. What about a bad day? If I was having a bad day and that happened, ooh, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
That's going to be like, I'm having a pretty rough time right now. If I accidentally drank a half of a real beer, and this one was a fancy one, so it was like a 9%er, basically a glass of wine, a 12-ounce glass of wine. Would it be difficult to stop? Yeah, it would be. Even 10 years, almost 10 years sober, it would be hard to stop. Which is, if you are going to do that, make sure, and I think it is the rule and the law that they are to pour it at your table. That's why there's no non-alcoholic beer on tap, because you could mess up. And that's something that's very important, and it is very risky. That is something where on the right day, it could take any of us out. Why? Because we're having the bad day. The alcohol reminds us of the good stuff that was there. We don't think about the bad, and then the alcohol takes over, much like it did with the green monkeys that drank themselves into oblivion. Why did they do that? Is it just that delicious? Were they that thirsty? No. It's chemical, alcohol. It's like the old saying, I forgot who said it, but he said, the man takes a drink, the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes the man. Or
Yes.
woman, to be politically correct. And we look at that, and it's like, that is what happened. In that case, it was the monkey took the drink took a drink, and then the drink took the monkey. And looking at that, I doubt the monkeys are sitting there wondering why they're depressed because of their upbringing. No, it is a chemical thing. And once we get that through our head, that it is chemical dependency and alcoholism is in and of itself its own thing. Do you drink because of certain issues? Sure. Absolutely. Did I drink because I was anxious? Sure. Am I an alcoholic because I was anxious? No. Did I drink because of family upbringing? Sure. Am I alcoholic because of family upbringing? No. I'm alcoholic for one reason and one reason alone, and that is because of alcohol. Plain and simple. Very, very cool.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Avocado, that's funny. I actually didn't like Guinness until they came out with the Zero. I actually do like, that's one of my favorite 0%ers.
Oh, I see your comment, Nancy. Okay.
Oh,
I hope we can help your loved one.
absolutely. All right, guys. Well, I think we had a good discussion today. I think this will open up a lot of thoughts and interesting conversation around alcohol, what Jordan Peterson says, what the mainstream says, because the mainstream advice did not help me, unfortunately, and how to really go through that and understand things. And if you want to learn more about what we got going on, go over to talksober.com. You can join us, click the big yellow button, and you can get in there and make that work, and all kinds of cool stuff. So thanks for being here. Smash that like button, and we'll see you guys next week.